I would like to focus on two unsolved mysteries at this point. The first one I don't care as much about, but it is an unsolved mystery nonetheless. And the second one I care more about because it could have some broader implications. So the first one is, why do Kokoro and Satoru report that they transfer at the same time intervals, even though Kokoro is at Sphia and Satoru is at the shelter cabin at different time intervals? They were actually there in two successive intervals of 33 minutes. First, Satoru was at Sphia, while Kokoro was in what I'm guessing right now was a fetus. Wait a second. Am I getting this mixed up? Because Kokoro was for. Okay, let me start over because I just started talking without thinking. So, yeah, at Sphia it's Kokoro's soul followed by fetus soul, right? So the way Kokoro goes is she goes from the shelter cabin to Satoru's body. Meanwhile, when she's in Satoru's body, Satoru is in a fetus. Then Satoru goes to the shelter cabin, and Kokoro goes into a fetus. So it would be so embarrassing I was wrong about this whole fetus thing, but I'll get to that later. So it's two divided intervals. And my first thought was, but they keep reporting that they were there for the same sets of 33 minutes. They were switched for the same sets of 33 minutes between them. And my thought was, well, there isn't any reason why the transfer cannot occur over an interval of something other than exactly 1 year. That was kind of like a double negative. There's no reason it has to be a year, right? It can be a year and 33 minutes. So that could cause a shift. The problem is I thought that through, and that doesn't really work. Because say it's 6 p.m. in the shelter cabin, and it's 6:33 p.m. at Sphia. And the swap happens. And the swap is and the interval is 1 year plus 33 minutes. So the swap happens, the first part of the swap happens at 6 p.m. shelter cabin time, and 6:33 p.m. Sphia time. This may have something to do with the rotation of the Earth, but there's time zones. It's not continuously variable time. So that's even though the Earth rotates, and these are at slightly different locations or at slightly different longitudes, it shouldn't matter. So again, 6 p.m. shelter cabin time, 6:33 p.m. Sphia time. So Kokoro transfers. She doesn't check the time before she transfers because the transfers happen unexpectedly. So she suddenly finds herself in Sphia, and it's 6:33 Sphia time, as I said. So she writes down, I transferred at 6:33. Then she goes into the fetus. She stays in Sphia for 33 minutes, and she goes into the fetus for 33 minutes. Or I could say she goes into the uterus, however you want to phrase it. And then she arrives back at the shelter cabin. And this will be 66 minutes later in the shelter cabin. So she'll arrive back at the shelter cabin, and it's 7:06 shelter cabin time. Because she started at 6, and she was gone to 66 minutes. She has to come back at 7:06. So she writes down, I transferred to Sphia at 6:33. And then I arrived back at the shelter cabin at 7:06. I was gone 33 minutes. All's well and good, right? And then you could say, okay, Satoru, unlike Kokoro, who goes Sphia first, then fetus, Satoru goes to shelter cabin first, and then he transfers into the fetus. And when he transfers into the fetus goes into Kokoro's body. Let's see, does this... Nope, I got it mixed up again. Man, this is terrible. I got that mixed up again, because the fetus eats the food first. So, okay. Well, it is, but okay. You have to not get mixed up having to do with who's in what body first, and then what the person transfers through first. So what's correct is Satoru goes into the fetus first, then the shelter cabin, right? what happens to Kokuro's body is she's possessed by a fetus first, then possessed by Satoru, right? That is correct. So whatever I said before might have been the same or different, but what I just said there is correct. So he would go, he is at Sphia at 6:33 Sphia time, but he doesn't check the time because the transfers happen unexpectedly. He gets transferred to the shelter cabin, but because he has to go into the fetus first, he arrives 33 minutes later at the shelter cabin. So he arrives at the shelter cabin at 6:33 shelter cabin time. So Kokoro says, okay, I arrived at Sphia at 6:33. And Satoru says, I arrived at the shelter cabin at 6:33. Cool, I lined them up. That makes sense, right? The only problem is that when Satoru transfers back to Sphia, he has to transfer back to Sphia 66 minutes after he left Sphia, which would put him at 7:39 on the according to the Sphia clock. So he would go, I was gone for 66 minutes, even though I only experienced 33 minutes of time at the shelter cabin, approximately. This is weird, right? So you can get get one of the times, you can get the switch time to line up, but you can't get the switch back time to line up if you make the transfer happen slightly more or slightly less than a year apart. So that's not really, that could be the explanation. But the problem is that was my only idea. I don't have any other ideas of how one of them could be wrong. You could say her watch was just systematically off by 33 minutes. That's a very lame explanation. And, although you can account for half of it that way, maybe. But you would expect the game to have something more substantial to say about this quandary than simply someone's watch was off. Right? That's lame. And they still have to do it. That would only solve one side, and so you still have to do some sort of other fudging to make it all work with that explanation. So that's the first highly technical and highly confusing unsolved mystery. The second one, which is also not solved, is the muteness of Hotori and the claims of the name. So when Kokoro talks to Hotori, which isn't really talking because she's mute and she has to write things down to say to Kokoro, you would intuitively think that the Hotori she's talking to, at least at the beginning, is the Hotori that was on flight HAL 18. Because Kokoro is on flight HAL 18, right? So Kokoro gets transferred to a different body because she gets disembodied. Sphia arrives on the mountain. So Sphia appears on the mountain, and her soul, remaining on the mountain, possesses the vessel that now arrived at the mountain, which is Satoru's body. You would think similarly that the soul of Hotori leaves her body, and then Sphia is now brought up to the mountain. The soul sees the vacant vessel that is Hotori, that is Inabushi Keiko's body, the body with long black hair, and possesses it. So the Hotori that Kokoro interacts with at Sphia is the Hotori that we see has now a frozen corpse on Mount Akakura, and it was on the flight. That Hotori is mute. She, though, seemed to have anticipated Kokoro, because when she first met Kokoro, she wrote down, there's many things I want to tell you, but first, there's this kid here that's looking for you, right? She didn't seem that alarmed that someone identifying themselves as Kokoro was in a man's body. And that could be because, one, she didn't know Kokoro, or the man, so she didn't really question that the man's name was Kokoro. And the second being, well, maybe she did overhear the conversation between Kokoro and Uni on the plane, so she then knew who Kokoro was. But she ended up in some foreign body, so she wouldn't be really that surprised that someone identified as Kokoro would also be in someone else's body, right? She already knew, right? So she was just like, and I said that she wasn't really that alarmed, but she did kind of act kind of a little bit funny, right? She got up and then she kind of like walked towards her, kind of pinning the body of Satoru against the wall, not literally pinning it, but kind of like walking towards him until she backed up, until Kokoro in Satoru's body backed up against the wall. There's some kind of puzzlement going on, right? So there could be some contemplation of, oh, this body and this person don't line up, name don't line up, but, I'm going to accept it for now because that's the same for me, right? Well, afterward, so then you would think, okay, so when everything swaps back, the person who was in the body of Inabushi Kaiko continued to identify herself as Hotori and knew the name Hotori. Which means, and we know with these body swapping things, you don't just get the memory of the person who was in your body. And you would think, okay, so first pass you go, okay, does that mean that just Inabushi Kaiko just died there in the body that was on the mountain? When that body died, Kaiko's soul was in there, and Kaiko died with it. Well, there's some problems with that, because Hotori continues to be mute for several more swapping instances. When Kokoro swaps into Sphia, she's seen writing things down and passing them to Uni. Writing when playing Kagame, right? He's like, Uni is the one behind me. She'd write that down and pass it to Uni. She never hears this Hotori speak when she is in Satoru's body at Sphia interacting with her. So you would think that this swapping is still happening, because these two people that are identifying themselves as Hotori, one of them is mute and one of them is obviously not. In addition, their personalities seem somewhat different. The one that's not mute is kind of, let's see here. It's a bit more, I don't know if Tsugumi-like, but she's a bit eccentric, right? Where she will she smashes and kills the rat. And she she'll watch somebody holding a knife over a dead body with a bunch of stab wounds and just look at the person and say, do you prefer to stab or be stabbed? And just not run away, finding herself just covered in blood. She also likes to run away from Utsumi screaming, I don't want to go, which now we learn probably means I don't want to die, because I think the word for go kind of can mean die in Japanese. Or it could also mean I don't want to go back to Mount Agakura, into the snowstorm, which you think might happen if she was tranquilized or killed or something. Now, in contrast, the mute Hotori dug a grave for the rat and wrote a gravestone message on chopsticks for it. Somewhat different, right? Tends to be much more reserved. The non-mute Hotori is kind of extroverted. The muted Hotori is kind of feeble and scared. However, the mute Hotori does have the ability to suddenly fly into a rage, which is unlike which we never see the non-mute Hotori do. We saw her kind of weird, but we didn't actually see her really fly into a rage and throw a chair. It seemed like she maybe was about to do that in a conversation Satoru was having with her, accusing her of not caring about life. But he got a swap happen before we saw the outburst actually get physical. So the swaps, these changing of the personalities of Hotori seem to keep happening later on in the week. So we could say that it keeps happening later on in the week, which suggests that it's not Hotori. Kaiko didn't just die right at the first swap, and it's the same Hotori all the way through. There's two different Hotoris still. You get what I mean? And of course, Hotori is also still swapping with the fetus. As we see her doing, like when she's playing in the blood, that's fetus, right? Obviously, at the beginning, where she's doing weird things that Satoru doesn't understand in Satoru's bedroom, that's the fetus. So that's early on, right? We see fetus behavior still happening in Hotori. So at least the fetus is still swapping in. And you would think no swaps at all would happen if Kaiko was dead in the body on on Akakura. So she did. So but the thing, if Kaiko didn't die right away, die immediately, and was still around, then you could say maybe there's Kaiko is actually still interacting with Satoru, but somehow she knew that Hotori was going to swap into her, and she took the opportunity. She didn't really know that Hotori was mute, however, so she decided to pretend to Satoru that she was permanently Hotori, and so that Satoru would think the soul of Kaiko was dead, so that Satoru would somehow be able to convince the world that she was now Hotori, and she would lose the reputation of Kaiko who committed the murders. It could continue taking over the life of Hotori, just within a different body. So it's all like an act. But she goofed up in that she didn't realize that Hotori was mute. And eventually that would catch up with her because the people who knew the Hotori she would be claiming to be would know that it couldn't be her. Unless maybe they... Because the thing is... If you don't know how to... Well, you could think she figured out how to talk in a new body that could or something. It's like, oh, she's mute? Well, I got a new body and my new body's not mute, so I can talk now. But you think maybe she would talk a little funny if she was mute for a long time and just learned to talk just then? And she doesn't seem to talk very funny. The voice actor is pretty... what's the word? It's the word for... speaking clearly. It's like diction or something. But anyway, good diction. So, good pronunciation and everything. So she might have a hard time making that go over. So, yeah. Now, eventually the body did die. It did seem to have died quite some time ago by the 17th. So, that makes it, that makes it even more strange. But Hotori didn't swap in the last swap, and she was still in the circle. So, maybe she died a while ago, but not as a while ago as Satoru thought. And as you can tell, I think the third person, or Alpha, are the unborn babies in the belly of Utsumi on July 18th that she was due to give birth to in August. I think that's what they're going for. And I don't necessarily say if I could say I called it, because I didn't predict this. However, I did think of the idea at some point before. But it's everything that they're hinting at, right? They're having Utsumi calm down the rampaging Satoru by mothering him. Even though you would have no idea how Utsumi would know who that was. But it's framing up the image. It's giving whether it makes sense or not in the context of the story, it's giving the reader a hint as to the true nature of the rampaging beast in Satoru by Utsumi's relationship with it. And the strange baby-like behavior of Hotori. And the play of a child, right? How, he didn't Satoru seemed to not understand what it meant to kill somebody. And Hotori was just playing in the blood. It's suggesting that. And there also is a short, so I forgot where in the chronology it happens. There is a short little piece of information dump with a background on it that looks like an ultrasound. And the ultrasound image seems to show twins, but vaguely. And Satoru claims he was feeling just this warm nothingness all around him. while this background image is on screen. So there's just a lot of hints here that that's what they're going for. That's just amazing, man. That's just... Yes. Body swapping with a fetus. Someone wrote that plot. It has been written. And it wasn't me who wrote it either. Okay, let's load what seems to be the tail end here of Satoru's route. What's going on here? Oh, okay. It was just a disc delay. Now I have to figure out if Otori and Utsumi and Yomogi survived. In order for the continuity to make sense, they have to die. And we haven't seen them alive yet. The light of the morning sun illuminating her face really brought out her feminine charm. Without thinking, I turned around and gathered her up in an embrace. Remember, you have a girlfriend that wants you back. No, he doesn't know that. Only Kokoro knows that. Until just recently, her body was my body. But right now, it wasn't mine at all. Another person's body, so to speak. The fact that it was another person's body made me extremely happy. Being able to hold it like this was like a dream. A dream? The first time I fell into her, I thought it was a dream as well. But now I thought it was far more like a happy dream to be separate like this. Fact and fiction, it was difficult to tell what the difference was between them. But I was sure of one thing. The warmth permeating my chest, our heartbeats, and our breathing. The sound of those two reverberations overlapped with each other. That was the only thing that mattered now.
ねえ、サトル。
Hey, Satoru.
一つ気になってたことがあるんだけど。
There's one thing that's been bothering me.
聞いてもいい？
Mind if I ask?
なんだ？
What is it?
サトル、メッセージにこんな言葉書いたでしょ。
This is what you wrote in your message, isn't it?
赤樹完成だっけ？
Sekiju Kansei,
あ
right?
れってどういう意味だったの？
What does that mean? And moreover, Kokoro and I have a connection that can't be severed even if someone tried to cut it. I just noticed it now, but it seems that I, without you, am just me. Either way, the fact that I am me doesn't change, but even so, when you're there, I feel like I can be more like myself. There's a 4-character Chinese aphorism that goes like that. Do you know it? Seiki Jukansei. Red accepts blue entirely is what it means. Maybe I've been trapped by that phenomenon myself. Of course, it's because you're here that this phenomenon came into existence in the first place.
わからないのか？
You don't understand?
うん、わからない。
Nope, I don't.
じゃあ、ずっとわからないままでいてくれ。
Then please go on without ever understanding. I told her before I let go.
ちょっと待ってよ。
Wait a second.
教えてよ。気になるじゃない。
Tell me, I'm curious. Kokoro chased after me, lifting the hem of her skirt off the ground as she did.
ねえ、サトルってば。
Hey, Satoru, with some suffixes. And moreover, in the first place, Satoru, enlightenment, and Kokoro, mind, have an unbreakable connection to each. I just noticed this, but it seems that the character Satoru, without mind, just becomes I. Originally, the fact that I was me didn't change either way. But even then, with Kokoro there, I became more like Satoru. Okay. So like the version of you that you saw in the place in the middle in the bad ending, right? That's I, correct? And that's the same I that walked up their clock tower. And then he said you looked at your name and you said I never liked my name that much. And then you started body swapping with Kokoro and you said I turned from I into Satoru. Okay. Seiki Jukansei. Maybe I've been trapped by that phenomenon myself. Of course, it was because Kokoro was there that this phenomenon came into existence in the first place, though.
あなた、しっかりして。
Dear, hang on, dear. Tsumi's voice suddenly reached my ears. After I climbed a little way up the hill, I could see her too. She was supporting the snow-covered Yomogi, shaking him back into consciousness periodically.
あなた大丈夫？
Darling, are you okay?
ああ、なんとかな。
Yeah, somehow.
どうやら僕は不死身らしい。
I appear to be nigh invulnerable.
そういう惑星から来た宇宙人なのかもな。
Maybe I'm actually an interstellar traveler of some sort, you know? You're about to be, because we're going to use one... They gotta have another swap to get them out of here, right? Because they're still on Mount Akakura. Even Satoru is.
よもぎ聖治なだけによみがえ。
Being Yomogi Seiji, it's only natural to be capable of resurrect...
もうバカ
Oh, baka. Cutting him off mid-joke, Utsumi flung herself in his arms. Yomogi caught her in a strong embrace and held her close. He buried her nose in her hair. His nose. Utsumi cried without holding back. She cried and cried, her sobs echoing as far as the distant mountain range. Otori? The sun rose above the ridges of the eastern mountains. Its rays shone down, casting a flickering shadow of gold over every snowy surface it touched. I looked far off into the distance and noticed the way of the peaks the mountains on the range lay, as if piled on top of one another. I surveyed the grandeur of the snow-covered mountain scenery before us. Everybody's like starving and stuff, though. It's a big problem. At the base of the mountain was a wide field that still remained a verdant green, with a clear brook running through it. Just until now, there had been nothing but darkness. But as the sun rose, the black shadow of the mountain range retreated as though chased away. Now the field had turned to gold as well. Overwhelmed by the natural beauty of it, I stood there fascinated for so long that I forgot the passage of time entirely. It was magical, like a scene some god had painted just for us.
ねえこっちの暮らしはどう？
Hey, how's life up here?
こっちって。
By here, you mean?
天国のことよ。
Here in Himmel. The conversation stopped me out of my reverie. I pricked my ears, trying to pick up what they were saying.
天国ってどういうことだい？
What do you mean by heaven?
まるで僕が死んでしまったみたいな言い方だけど。
You say that as though I died.
そうよね。
Yes, that's right, isn't it?
あなたは生きてる。
You are alive.
どうしちまったんだよ、一体。
Just what happened
じゃ
anyway.
あここはどこなの？
Then where are we?
赤倉岳さ。
On Mount Akakura.
赤倉岳って。
Mount Akakura, you mean?
ああ、そうだ。
Yeah, that's right. It's like, how did I get up here from Svea?
それよりも、君の方こそどうしてこんなところに？
Moreover, though, how did you get up
しかも
here?
彼女まで。
And furthermore, with her.
彼女ってほとりちゃんのこと？
By her, you mean Hotori-chan.
ほとり？
Hotori? I followed the direction of their gaze, and sure enough, there was Hotori. She dropped to her knees in the snow. Kokoro was by her side, saying something to her.
ほとりちゃん？ほとりちゃん？平気？
And she's gonna find out she's not mute, and it's gonna freak things out. Hotori-chan, are you okay?
ねえ、どこか具合でも悪いの？
Or is she mute? Hey, are you feeling okay? Hotori's eyes were blank. Her mouth hung wide open as though her mind had deserted her. Maybe the shock of the avalanche just before had rendered her unable to stand. She was at least able to give a tentative nod of her head and then to shake it in answer to Kokoro's questions. It seemed like there was nothing to worry about there. More importantly, Yamogi, Utsumi, Hotori, Kokoro, and myself, there were only 5 of us here. Where did the remaining person go? That is Uni. Uni went to go get rescued. Curious, I approached Yomogi and Utsumi. And then, before I called out to them, Yomogi
い
spoke.
や、助かったよ。
Wow, you really saved me there.
君のおかげで命拾いした。
Thanks to you, I managed to escape with my life.
ありがと
Thanks a lot.
いや、礼なら俺よりも内海さんの方に行ってくれ。
Now, if you're going to thank anyone, it should be Utsumi-san.
雪に埋まってたあんたを助けたのは彼女なんだから。
She's the one who dug you out from under the snow.
でもその彼女、こいつを助けてくれたのは君だ。
But you were the one who saved her in the first place. After directing a glance at Utsumi, Yomogi went
君
on.
があと少しでも来るのが遅れていたら、
If you'd gotten here even a moment later than you did,
僕らは全員今頃冷たい雪の下で眠っていたことだろ
we'd all probably be sleeping the big sleep under all that snow right now. What's even weirder is how Utsumi and Hotori went right to where Yomogi was. How they know which way to go to get to Yomogi. All right, that's also
う。
weird.
本当にありがとう。
You have my deepest thanks. Because they didn't even know they were on Agakura. They just went some whatever direction. They managed to encounter Yomogi. I looked away from Yomogi and scratched at my nose.
ああ、そうだ。
Oh, that's right.
聞きたいことがあるんだけど。
There's something I wanted to ask you. I turned to Utsumi as I did.
ユニのことなんだ。
It's about
ユニ
Uni.
は今どこに？
Where is he right now?
ユニくんだったら
If it's Uni-kun you're talking about. Sumi turned and looked up at the very top of the slope. There was a small silhouette near the ridge. It was heading this way, waving its hand furiously. Hey, everyone, are you alright? I'm coming to you right now, so wait there, okay? According to Utsumi, this is what happened before the avalanche. Utsumi, Otori, and Uni fell through the front gate of Sphia. Left through the front gate of Sphia. All three of them were then suddenly thrown into the extreme cold of Mount Akakura, where they lost their way. Sphia had abruptly disappeared. Attempting to chase after the shadow of it, the three of them began wandering in the snowstorm. Eventually, after heading east for a while, a man's voice reached their ears. They just happened to go east. How convenient. It was Yomogi's voice. That was how they had their chance meeting. Means that someone unexpectedly, in relation to that, what Asumi might have thought at that time is likely to be something unimaginable. After all, it's not an unusual sight to see your husband, who has been dead for a year, suddenly appearing in front of you. It's not a usual sight. Not to mention it happened here in this hellish world of snow. At least Utsumi hasn't yet considered the idea that this place is some kind of heaven. Yes, she has. Miraculously, though, they had met close to the point where the avalanche would occur, location X. More specifically, they met slightly above location X at the top of a steep hill. Of course, Yomogi tried to lead the three of them to the shelter cabin. However, at the very next moment, Utsumi and Otori disappeared from Yomogi's sight. The two of them had stepped onto a cornice of snow overhanging the ledge, which had collapsed under their weight, sending them tumbling down the slope. Yomogi tried to save them, but slipped and fell down the slope himself. That was how he'd injured his foot. A rock jutting out of the snow had gouged him pretty hard in the calf. Soon after, they finally came to a stop. They were on top of the wide shelf of rock, just above the exact coordinates of location X. And that's where I came in. I don't think I need to repeat what happened next. That's why Uni was the only one not caught in the avalanche. A lot of that which we call history resides in darkness, never touched by the light. The amount of history that humans can know is limited. No one could have imagined a sequence of events like this just from reading an article or in a newspaper or a magazine. Yes, but the article said there were bodies! History was. Now that you mention, after all this, just what kind of history will be written in the stream of time? There's no way they'd be able to find any decomposing bodies in July, correct? Then on January 17th, in other words today, what will history be like when the rescue team only discovers Uni? Of course, the course it will take depends on our actions right now, in the present. I still hadn't decided anything. Even I didn't know what I was supposed to do. My worries and annoyances were increased even more. However, under this morning sunshine, the golden scenery, the magnificent view over the mountains, either their mysterious beauty, all my worries were blown away without it. Before their mysterious beauty, all my worries about plot holes were blown away without a trace. At any rate, I managed to save them. History had already been changed. I can think about the future later. Right now, it'd be fine to just let the sensation of everything coming to a close wash over me. So I thought. Suddenly, I felt someone tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see
な
Yomoni.
あ、一つだけ聞いてもいいか？
Hey, can I ask you something? Here's something I just realized. Where's Len?
君は一体
Just,
誰なんだい？
who are you? Where is Lynn? The fresh breeze of the midwinter wind. I inhaled the crisp air with all my might and shouted it out.
俺の名前は
My name is
結城堂悟だ。
Yukido Satoru. Present time, 12:20 p.m.
これは2011年1月17日月曜日。
The date was supposed to be Monday, January 17th,
だ
2011.
けど本当は
But in reality,
2012年1月17日火曜日。
it was Tuesday, January 17th, 2012.
とても信じられないことだけれど、私は1年後の未来へと飛ばされてしまったのだ。
So they managed to get back in and ride another switch. Interesting. Because they were all on Mount Akakura when we just left off. I could hardly believe it, but I jumped 1 year into the future.
おい心、こんなところで何やってるんだ？
Hey Kokoro, what are you doing in a place like this? Well, it's because she just jumped in. I guess you could say, why did she enter the facility? But you would if you were on like some cold winter place and there was a facility to go into. I turned around and saw him standing beyond the open door. The official owner of this room, Yukito Satoru. And in the body he officially owned as well. As soon as I thought that, I felt lonely for just a short moment. Like I'd been cut in half.
なあ聞いてんのか心。
Hey, you listening, Kokoro? yes.
ちょっとね、忘れないうちに記録しとこうと思って。
I just thought I'd record for a bit before I forgot.
記録？
Record? I waved the voice recorder at him. The record button was still pressed down. I hastily hit stop.
小説でも書くつもりなのか？
Are you planning on writing a novel or something?
まさか。
No way, I have Kutaro Uchikoshi to do that for me.
じゃあどうして？
Well then, why?
だから忘れないようにするためだって。
I told you, it's so I don't forget. The days I spent here, that I met Satoru.
それよりも他のみんなは？
More importantly, where is everyone else who have to take a group photo at the end of the game?
もうとっくに出てったよ。
They went outside a long time ago.
今頃海を見て驚いてるんじゃないかな。
They're probably out there oohing and awing over the ocean right now.
特によもぎさんは。
Especially Yomogi-san.
じゃあスフィアに残ってるのは私とサトルだけ？
Then are you and I the only ones left in Sphere, Satoru?
そういうことになるな。
That's right.
そっか。
I see. Remember now, this game has no romance elements in it whatsoever. I slipped the voice recorder into my pocket and sat down on the bed. I'd probably never return to Sphere again. With that in mind, I felt slightly reluctant to leave. It was only for a little while, but I had been living here for 1 week.
ねえサトル、
Whose room were you using? Hey, Satoru. Maybe Hotori's?
次の転移っていつ起こるのかな？
When's the next transfer going to happen?
おそらく当分の間は起こらないだろ
Most likely, not for a while.
う。1週間か1ヶ月か半年か
Maybe in a week, maybe in a month, or maybe even a year.
わからないけど、とにかく18便の残骸が全て撤去されるまでは転移は発生しないと思う。
I'm not sure, but at any rate, it probably won't happen until after the wreckage of Flight 18 is cleaned up.
そうでなければ作業員の誰かが必ず気づいてしまうことになるからな。
If not, then I'm sure one of the workers would have noticed it
赤倉岳に飛ばされてきたスフィアの存在に。
and wondered why Sphere had suddenly jumped to Mount Akakura.
もっとも今言ったのは1年前のことについてだけど、
However, what we're talking about happened a year ago,
去年の歴史、
last year's history.
その歴史の中では誰も時空間転移なんて現象を目撃した者はいなかった。
There wasn't a single person recorded in that history who witnessed the space-time transfer phenomenon, or else it would have been mentioned already. Oh, maybe they just no one would believe them because no one would believe them.
だから少なくとも赤倉岳に人がいるうちは
So at the very least, as long as there's someone at Mount
転
Akakura,
移は起こらない。
no transfers will happen.
あ、多分な。
Yeah, most likely.
なるほどね。
I see.
って納得してる場合じゃないってば。
Hey, this isn't the time to just complacently put an ending to it.
それじゃあユニはどうなるのよ？
So what's going to happen to Uni?
別に
Not much.
どうもなら
Really.
ないさ。救助隊が来て彼を発見し病院へと搬送する。
The rescue team will arrive, discover him, and take him to a hospital.
以上終了。
That's it, the end.
ちょっと待って。
Wait a minute, doesn't he get in on the plan and stuff?
ってことはユニが助け出されるっていう歴史だけはもう一度同じように繰り返されるってこと？
So that means that only the event of Uni being saved will repeat itself the same way again?
歴史にも慣性の法則みたいなものがあるんじゃないかな。
History most likely has something like a law of inertia too.
できる限り同じ状態を保とうとする力が働くんだよ、きっと。
I'm sure there's some power at work trying its best to make those circumstances occur the same way as before. We've only barely touched on the events that happened in the past. After the avalanche, we gazed at the beautiful scenery for so long we lost track of time, so the six of us walked to the shelter cabin. Having wounded his leg, Yomogi had to use Satoru's shoulder for support. We'd then been walking at a snail's pace, but somehow we all managed to make it to our destination. And just then, it was before we thought we were safe. Is it because we thought we were safe? As though he couldn't contain himself, Uni suddenly took off running, practically flying over the snow, climbed up the hill as all alone. There was no one to stop him. Even Satoru hadn't noticed it. The possibility that space-time transfer would occur at any given moment. Who would have guessed? As soon as we realized it, the bowl-shaped hollow disappeared right in front of our eyes, only to be replaced with a high wall of sphere. Yamogi, Utsumi, and Otori just stood there, as though their souls had left their bodies. And so Uni was left behind all alone at the shelter cabin. Well, rather than left behind, it would be better to say that he was the only one who went forward. At any rate, he'd suddenly disappeared from right in front of us. Yamogi and Utsumi reacted first and took off, chasing after him. The one who calmed him down was Satoru.
ユニは必ず戻ってくるよ。
It'll be fine. Uni will definitely be back.
心配するな。俺が保証する。
Don't worry, I guarantee it. Because there's actually two Unis up there, right? One of them is going to be back. One of them is going to be left behind. Yamogi and Utsumi were dubious. But still, in the face of Satoru's utmost sincerity, they couldn't help but believe him. I didn't hear about this until later, but apparently Satoru had a plan. A way to prove that Uni was alright without explaining the space-time transfer to Yomogi and Utsumi. And that was...
簡単なことだよ。
It's simple.
2012年のアオサギ島にいるユニ。
The Uni at Asogi Island in
そのユニ
2012.
に2人を引き合わせてやればいいんだ。
I just need to introduce them to him. As he turned his face to me with that statement, Satoru, just as his name implied, looked as if he'd reached the new stage of enlightenment. Satori? Interesting. A smile as though he'd broken down every wall. Seeing a confidence that almost seemed to emanate from him, I decided to entrust him with everything. He was my partner, the person I trusted most. There's no doubt that he's the best one to handle this, that's what I thought. And with Satoru leading us, we passed through the gates of Sphia. Since then, 2 space-time transfers had occurred, and now Sphia was at the Asogi Island of 2012. According to what Satoru said earlier, Yomogi, Utsumi, and Otori had gone out to the coast. I stayed behind at Sphia to try and shift through the fragments of my memories. That was when Satoru showed up, and we reached the present.
ところで、心。
By the way, Kokoro,
3点ばかり質問があるんだが、聞いてもいいか？
I have a 3-part question for you. Mind if I ask? Satoru came closer to me, wearing a smile. As the distance between us lessened, I found myself feeling a little flustered. I pulled myself up straight and gently inclined my chin. He walked over to the desk and picked up something lying there. It was the memo pad that we'd used to exchange our messages. Satoru flipped through the pages. I felt very embarrassed somehow, as though someone were reading an exchange diary I kept with my lover. Though, of course, my partner in that diary exchange was none other than Satoru himself.
質問って何？
What's the question? As I asked, Satoru tore out a single page and held it up
こ
to
れ
me.
お前が書いたのか？
Were you the one who drew this? I couldn't see it very well from here. I got up from the bed and came right up to him. I looked at the piece of paper. Written there was a single sentence, transfer 1:07 p.m., accompanied by some incomprehensible design.
上の文字の方は確かに私が書いたものだけど。
Let's see, the letters at the top are mine, but... It's the fetus. The fetus scribbled. Oh! Oh!
下のやつは
That thing at the bottom. I swallowed my words halfway. I stared intently at that design. Beyond the chaotic, entwined, and complex lines, a vague image surfaced. It was an illustration I'd drawn. a picture of a tulip that emitted an idyllic fragrance into the air. I instantly replied,
もうサトルひどいよ。
Geez, Satoru, that's so
ど
mean.
うしてこんなことするの？
Why'd you do something like this?
こんなことって。
Something like
上
what?
から落書きしたのサトルでしょ？は
You were the one who did all those scribbles at the top, weren't you?
あ、一生懸命頑張って書いたのにな。
And I put so much work into that drawing too.
じゃあこれは
Then this...
オランダに帰るオランダに帰ると空港でわめき散らすチューリップ似の人ではないんだな。
So it's not a guy who looks like a tulip screaming, go back to the Netherlands, go back to the Netherlands at the top of his lungs outside an airport, is it?
は？
What?
いや、なんでもない。
nothing.
とにかくこのデタラメな文様は心が書いたわけじゃなかったと。
At any rate, Kokoro, you weren't the one who drew this freaky thing.
そういうことだろ？
Were you?
一部は私が書いたものだけどね。
I drew part of
で
it,
もその上に誰かが落書きを。
but someone scribbled all over it.
そうか。やっぱりな。
I see. That's what I thought.
では次の質問だ。
Then the next question. Satoru jumped right to his next question before I had time to interject. That was the first fetus head? That was... No, the first one was when you're a Kokoro and the food gets eaten. But, wow. That completely passed me up. I just took that as a joke. It was not a joke, it was a hint.
新聞を破いたのはお前か？
Were you the one who tore up the newspaper? She started it.
え？
What?
避難小屋に置いてあった新聞だよ。
The newspaper that was in the shelter cabin.
あれを破いたのは
The one who tore it up.
私じゃない
It wasn't me.
と思う。
I think.
と思う？
You think.
確信を持って断言することはできないの。
I can't say with absolute certainty.
私、あの記事を読んだとき、なんていうか、取り乱しちゃってたから。
Because when I read that article, I felt kind of distracted.
なるほどね。
I see.
まあだけど今の答えだけでも十分だ。
But that's enough of an answer for now.
それじゃあ最後の質問。
Now then, my last question.
心は赤い夢を見たことがあるか？
Kokoro, have you had a red dream before?
赤い夢？
A red dream?
目に映るもののすべてが柔らかな赤に染まった夢。
A dream where everything you saw was a gentle shade of red.
安らぎに包まれて甘い匂いの中へととろけていくような。
Like being wrapped up in tranquility, melting in a sweet smell.
そう。例えば用水の中を漂っているような。
Yeah, like you were drifting in amniotic fluid.
そんな夢を。
I kind of liked it when it was more ambiguous, where it just like, it was less obvious, but a dream like that. I stared into his eyes. I felt like the captivating sparkle of his eyes was about to suck me in.
うん、何度か。
Yeah, a few times. The reply squeaked out of me as though I were in a delirium. Satoru grinned in relief. He gave a single nod as though convinced. And then...
ありがとう。参考になったよ。
Thank you. You were very informative. He tried to end the conversation with that. I instantly tried to say something to quickly reopen the closing curtain.
ちょっと待って。
Wait a
一
sec.
人で納得してないで。私にも教えてよ。
Don't just act all self-satisfied now that you've got it figured out. Tell me too. A smile lit up on his face as he answered.
いずれ心にもわかる時が来るさ。
That was something dumb. Okay. The time for you to understand will come as well, Kokoro.
いずれって、
The time?
いずれっていつ？
When exactly will that time be? When you play this game, that is.
いつだろうな。
I wonder.
未来であることは間違いないと思うけど。
I'm pretty sure it'll be in the future, though. We stared at each other. Silence lengthened between us.
さあ、そろそろ行こうか。
Well, we should get
み
going.
んな待ってるかもしれないし。
Everyone's probably waiting for us. And with that, Satoru left the room. And left me behind with only the echo of his words hanging in the air. I stood alone in that uncomfortable silence. The alarm clock on the desk continued to tick away the seconds. I took a glance at its revolving hands. It showed the current time, 12:32.
ねえ、待ってよ、サトル。
Hey, wait up, Satoru! I came running out of the building after him. And by the time I caught sight of his receding figure, he was almost at the front gate.
やっと追いついた。
I finally caught up. I stood behind him, out of breath.
元気だな、心は。
You sure are a bundle of energy, Kokoro. He stopped walking and turned to
よく
me.
走る気力が残ってるよな、お前。
It's astounding that you still have the strength to run.
気力なんて残ってないよ。
I do not.
残ってないけど、でも、
I don't.
でも、
But
置いてけぼりにされるのが嫌だったの。
I hate being left
さ
behind.
っきまで一人で俺の部屋にいたのに。
Even though you were alone in my room not too long ago.
一つなのが一つのままでいるのと、一つなのが半分こになっちゃうのは全然違うんだよ。
There's a difference between one staying as one and one suddenly being halved, you know.
お前、なんか遠回しに俺に伝えようとしてないか？
Are you trying to tell me something? Something deep in my chest gave a jump. The racing beat of my heart. And suddenly, as though resonating with that beat, the sound of the bell resounded. I looked back in search of the source. I realized immediately where the sound was coming
時
from.
計台だ。
The clock tower. The tower soared proudly over the earth below, as though perched atop a sacred temple of ice. Thanks to the clarity of the midwinter air, even from far away, I could clearly make out the numbers on the clock. The hour and minute hands. They overlapped, pointing directly to the heavens. Eh? Okay, so the clock in Sphia is off. It's 33 minutes ahead. Okay. I'll have to think that through.
そんな
What?
嘘。
No way. The words that fell out of my mouth had less substance than a handful of fists. My mind went white. As if to shake off that white shadow, I began to count each toll of the bell. 12 of them. 12. After chiming away exactly a dozen hours, the hoarse metallic clanging suddenly stopped. I immediately checked the watch on my right wrist. The analog hands clearly indicated 12
どうし
o'clock.
たんだ？
What is it? Satoru took a peek at my face. Desperate for something to cling to, I told him what was on my
なん
mind.
で12時なの？
Why is it 12 o'clock? What?
だって変じゃない。
But isn't it weird?
私がサトルの部屋を出た時は12時32分だったのよ。
When I left your room, it was already 12:32.
なのにどうして今が正午なの？
So how can it be noon now?
どうしてって言われてもな。
Even if you ask me.
俺の時計だって、ほら、12時だし。
Here, look, it's 12 o'clock by my watch, too. So she was using the clock in the room. He was using his own watch. As he said that, Satoru took out his wristwatch from his pocket.
何これ？
What's this?
見てわかんないのか？腕時計だよ。
Can't you tell? It's a wristwatch.
そんなの分かってるってば。
I know that
ど
much.
うしてこんなものサトルが持ってるの？
Why do you have something like this on you, Satoru?
どうしてってそれは、
Why?
時計を売ってる店に行って、お金と交換してもらったからだよ。
Because I went to a shop that sells watches, gave them money, and received a watch in exchange.
つまりこれはサトルの腕時計ってこと？
You mean that watch belongs to you, Satoru?
ちょっと待て。
Hold on a second.
なんでそんなこと聞くんだ？
Why are you asking me this? Satoru's head snapped up.
まさかお前、この時計を見たことがないとか言い出さないよな。
It can't be. Don't tell me you've never seen this watch before.
言い出しちゃダメなの？
You don't want me to tell you?
おいおいおいおい、マジかよマジかよマジっすか？
Hey, 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 are you serious? I mean, seriously serious?
マジっす。
Yeah, seriously.
じゃあ、お前は今まで、このスフィアで、どうやって時間を確かめてたんだよ。
How in the world were you checking the time at Sphia?
サトルの部屋に置いてあった目覚まし時計。
With the alarm clock in your room.
それで確かめてました。
I always check the time against that. At my reply, he gave a great shake of his head.
は
Ah. And gave a long sigh. And then placed his middle and index fingers together and began to tap on his temple with them. And then faced the heavens and stared off at a single empty point in space. So let me try to work this out. So, say, we're going to assume it at the same time. So it's 6 both ways, right? So Kokoro goes into Satoru's body first, then the fetus, then back to her body, right? So she would arrive at Sphia at 6 Sphia time, but she would read the clock and write down 6:33. Then she would get back to the shelter cabin at 7:06 shelter cabin time, look at her watch and write down 7:06. So she would say 6:33 to 7:06. Then Satoru, he goes into the fetus first. Yeah, then into Kokoro, then back. So he goes into the fetus for 30. He's 6 o'clock Sphia time. Goes into the fetus for 30 minutes. Shows up at the shelter cabin at 6:33 shelter cabin time. Checks the watch, says 6:33. Arrives back at Sphia at 7:06. Okay, so they both write down the same thing. Okay. They both write down 6:33 to 7:06. That works. That solves it. Although it's lame. It's lame that just the clock is off. I then faced... Okay. All movement stopped. Eventually his gaze dropped back down to my level.
心、さっきこう言ったよな。
This is what you just said, right, Kokoro?
部屋を出た時は12時32分だったって。
It was 12:32 when we left the room. Yes?
その時間はどっちを見て分かったんだ？
Where did you see that time?
今お前がはめてる腕時計か？
The watch you're
それ
wearing
と
right...
も
The watch you're wearing right now,
目
or
覚まし時計の
the alarm clock.
やれやれ。やっぱりそういうことか。
Sheesh, so that was it after all.
そういうことって
Kokoro was getting more and more frustrated. What do you mean by that?
つまりだ。
In other words,
あの部屋に置いてある目覚まし時計は32分以上進んでるってことだよ。
that alarm clock was over 32 minutes fast.
ここまで来るのに1分かかったとすれば、おそらく33分。
If it took 1 minute to get out here, then that'd probably add up to exactly 33 minutes.
あの時計は常に33分先の時間を示してたってわけだ。
So the clock always shows the time 33 minutes
じゃ
later.
あ私はスフィアにいる時にはいつも間違った時刻を見てたってこと？
So whenever I was at Sphia, I was always looking at the wrong time.
ああ、多分な。
Yeah, probably.
そうだったんだ。っ
Is that right?
ていうかたったそれだけのことだったんだ。
Rather, was that all it was?
またなんか変な現象が発生したんじゃないかと思って心配しちゃったよ。
I was worried that some other weird phenomenon was starting up or something. A smile jumped to my face as I put both hands up to my cheeks. Satoru stared at me with distant, vague eyes.
お前、のんきでいいな。
You don't have a care in the world, do you? He said that. What? I tilted my head slightly, hands still on my cheeks. Without another word, Satoru headed for the gate again. Once again, I'd been left behind.
もう何も言わないで勝手に行かないでよ。
Geez, don't just leave on your own without saying anything.
待ってよサトル。
Wait, Satoru. The glittering sun to the south. In the brilliant downpour of its light, I ran. I caught up with him and slowed my pace. I started walking by his side. I had to speed up a little to keep up with him. We passed through the open gate. His right leg, my left leg. We stepped across the boundary and out of the circle together. Infinite mystery. Kokoro and I walked along the beach together. Yes, we're switching to Satoru's perspective. The sound of the waves played a gentle lullaby. Kokoro took a deep breath of the fresh winter air, as though refreshing herself. Her hair blew in the wind. Pushing it back with one hand, she began to walk around and around, drawing a spiral in the sand with her footsteps. She was so close that her shoulders were almost touching. If I were to move a little closer, it felt like our arms could intertwine. I nonchalantly stepped a little to the side. Still staring at her feet, she closed the distance between us again. There was nowhere to run, because I was the one walking at the water's edge. Suddenly, a remarkably tall white wave broke over the beach. I immediately kicked off the sand and avoided it. Ka. When I turned to look, her boots had been immersed up to the ankles in seawater.
冷たい。
So cold. Such a carefree scene. In front of this ordinary scenario, I unconsciously broke out into a smile.
サトル濡れちゃったよ。
Satoru, they got all wet. She ran over to me, sending up a spray of cold water as she came. Sure enough, she grabbed onto my arm. She twined herself around it. It would be impossible to shake her off. Without saying a word, I started walking again. She put on a innocent smile. I shook my head amazed. I looked up and saw the serene blue sky high overhead. The gentle sunlight, the sound of the waves, and Coco's warmth on my arm. With the shadow of Sphia far in the distance, it felt like I could forget everything about the transference phenomenon if I wanted. Eventually...
あ、見て見て、サトル。
Oh, look, Satoru.
ヨモギさんたちがいるよ。
There's Yomogi and the rest. She called out to them much more loudly than necessary.
おーい、みんな。
Hello, hey everyone. Kokoro ran over to them, waving her hands wildly, leaving me behind on the beach. I remembered what Kokoro had said to me.
一つなのが一つのままでいるのと、一つなのが半分こになっちゃうのは全然違うんだよ。
There's a difference between one staying as one and one suddenly becoming halved, do you know?
半分こ
Halved, huh? My muttering floated along on the sea breeze and disappeared. Kokoro was now in the midst of a lighthearted chat with Yomogi and Utsumi. A little away from where they stood, Lin and Lin is here, okay. Hotori were visible as well. They were standing side by side facing the sea, quietly talking about something. Lin and Hotori shouldn't be acquainted with one another. Because Hori and Hotori can talk. Just not to Kokoro. What could they be talking about? I couldn't make out anything they were saying from here. By the way, where's Yuni? I scanned the coastline, but I couldn't see him anywhere. Right at that moment, someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around to see him standing right in front of me, as if he'd been waiting for me. He had a self-satisfied grin on his face.
今、僕のこと探してたでしょ。
You were looking for me just now, weren't you? I kept silent. This Uni was the Uni of 2012. The Uni that knew everything. I opened my mouth, feeling as if I'd surrendered to doing things at this pace the moment I did.
何か聞きたいことがあるんじゃないの？
Isn't there something you want to ask me? He was so much shorter than me, there could be no comparison, but somehow it felt like he was the one looking down at me. It was kind of aggravating.
じゃあお言葉に甘えて聞かせてもらおう。
Well, I guess I'll take you up on that offer.
どうぞ。
Go ahead.
なんで今まで黙ってた？
Why'd you stay quiet until now?
黙ってた？
Stay quiet.
とぼけんね。
Don't play dumb.
お前は避難小屋にいたユニだ。
You're the Uni at the shelter cabin.
同時に1月17日に救助隊によって発見されたユニでもある。
Also the same Uni discovered by the rescue team on January 17th.
その前にはお前はスフィアにいて、俺や内海さんやほとりと共に7日間を過ごしてきた。
And before that, you supposedly spent 7 days time with me, Utsumi, and Otori at
という
Sphia.
ことは避難小屋にいたお前はスフィアで起きた全ての出来事を知っていたということになる。
Which means that at the shelter cabin, you already knew everything that was going to happen at Sphia.
もちろんそれだけじゃない。
And of course, that's not
お
all.
前は転移現象のことも全部知っていた。
You knew everything about the transference phenomenon.
そうでなければ2011年の赤倉岳に戻ることはできないからな。
If not, you wouldn't have been able to return to the Mount Akakura of 2011, would you?
にもかかわらずお前は何も言わなかっ
And in spite of all that, you didn't say a
た。
thing.
俺にも心にも転移現象のことについて一言も教えてくれなかった。
You didn't say a word about the transference phenomenon to either me or Kokoro.
どうしてんだ？
Why?
教えたじゃないか。
But I did!
シャトルにだけは言ったはずだよ。
You were the only one I told, right?
14日にね。
On the 14th.
14日だろ？それまで3日間もあったじゃないか。
But that was the 14th, right? That was 3 days after we met, wasn't it?
うん。あったね。
Yep, it was.
おいユニ頼むよ。
Hey, Uni, come
も
on.
うしらばっくれる必要はないだろ。
There's no need to hide anything anymore, right?
全部打ち明けてくれ。
Come clean already.
なぜ黙ってたんだ？
Why'd you stay quiet?
そうだな。
Let's
教
see.
えてあげてもいいけど、ちょっと拍子抜けするような答えだと思うよ。
I could tell you, but the answer might be kind of a letdown.
それでもいい？
Is it alright with you?
あ、
本
Yeah?
当に？
Really? Yep.
じゃあ教えてあげよう。
Then I'll tell you.
僕はね、ただ過去を変えたくなかっただけなんだ。
Because I didn't want to change the past.
過去っていうか未来っていうか、
Well, the past, or I guess you could say the future.
とにかく2011年に赤倉岳で起きた出来事をその通りに繰り返したかっただけなんだよ。
Anyway, I wanted the things that happened at Mount Akakura in 2011 to repeat themselves exactly as they were meant
つ
to.
まり歴史を変えたくなかった
In other words, you didn't want to change history? Yep.
そのために今日まで頑張ってきたんだ。
For that to happen, I tried my best until
た
today.
だそれだけのために僕はこの1年間を費やしてきた。
I spent the past year working toward that
時
goal.
空間転移のことを勉強したり、いろんな準備をしたりして、
I studied up on the space-time transfer and made a bunch of preparations,
今日この日が訪れることを僕は待ってたんだよ。
waiting for this day to
こ
come.
の瞬間をひたすら待ち続けてきた。
I waited with all of my heart for this moment.
僕が転移現象のことを熟知してるのはだからなんだ。
That's why I knew so much about the transference phenomenon.
なるほ
I see.
ど。じゃあお前が1年前の赤倉岳に戻ったのも歴史をなぞるためだったんだな。
So your returning to Mount Akakura of 1 year ago is also to retrace history, huh?
そう。2011年の避難小屋には僕という存在が必要不可欠だったから。
That's right, because my existence at the shelter cabin in 2011 was
それ
essential.
にね、
Besides,
そもそも僕が1年前の赤倉岳に戻らなかったら、セイジやトビリンを避難小屋に誘導する人がいなくなっちゃうでしょ。
in the first place, if I didn't return to the shelter cabin of 2011, the person who led Seiji and Tobulin there wouldn't exist, right?
そしたら2人は墜落直後の吹雪の中で遭難しちゃってたことになる。
If that happened, then they would have been lost in the snowstorm after the crash.
僕が行かなければ2人は1月11日の時点で
If I didn't go at the right time on January 11th, they would have died. Naturally, Kokoro would have met the same fate.
そうか。
I see.
まず最初の発端は彼らを救うことにあったってわけか。
So you saving them was the beginning of everything, huh? Yep. Now that that's been said, it was hard to condemn all of his actions outright. My mental state became even more complex.
まあいいだろう。
Well, okay.
彼らを救うために果敢にも時間跳躍という危険な現象に挑んでいったお前の勇気だけは素直に認めることにしよ
I'll acknowledge your bravery in challenging the dangerous time jump phenomenon to save
う。だ
them.
がその後の行動が腑に落ちない。
But it's still hard to understand why you did what you did after that.
なぜ歴史をなぞる必要があった。
Why'd you need to make sure history was repeated?
よもぎさんたちを避難小屋に導いた時点でお前の目的は完遂されたわけではなかったのか。
Wasn't your objective completed after you led Yomogi and the others to the shelter cabin?
全くね。
Not at all.
それは単なる始まりに過ぎなかったんだよ。
That was only the beginning.
なぜ歴史をなぞる必要があったのか。今そう言ったよね。
Why'd you need to make sure history was repeated? That's what you said just now, right?
その理由を一言で言うと、時空間転移を発生させるためってことになる。
In short, just so the space-time transfer could occur.
時空間転移を
The space-time transfer. Yep.
それが起きなければ聖司たちを助けることができなくなるでしょ。だから
If those didn't happen, then Seiji and the others could never be saved, right? That's why.
待ってくれ。
Hold
もっと
on.
詳しく説明してくれないか。
Could you explain that in a little more detail?
いいよ。
Sure.
まず2011年の1月17日に赤倉岳に救助隊が来てくれたのはどうしてだと思う？
First, why do you think that the rescue team managed to arrive on January 17, 2011?
天候が回復したからだろ。
It's because the weather improved, isn't
も
it?
ちろん天気のこともあるけど、それだけじゃないよ。
Of course, the weather had something to do with it, but it wasn't just
あ
that.
る時まで政府の対策本部は18便の墜落地点を特定できてなかったんだ。
Until a certain moment in time, the specific location of the crash site of Flight 18 remained unknown to the government task force's headquarters.
その場所が判明したのは一本の電話がかかってきたから。
It was because of a phone call that they found it out.
僕らが避難小屋でかけた衛星電話。
A call made from the satellite phone we had in the shelter cabin.
もしもそれが繋がらなかったら17日の段階で墜落機の残骸が見つかることはなかっただろうし、
If not for that, then I don't think the rescue team on the 17th could have found the wreckage.
当然そのことが報道されることもなかったと思う。
And naturally, I don't think it would have been reported
で
either.
ここが重要なんだけど、
Finally, and this is the most important part, this is the important
僕ら
part.
がかけた衛星電話はね、偶然繋がっただけだったんだ。
The satellite phone that we used had connected totally by chance.
わかる？偶然って意味。
You understand, right, what chance means?
偶然起きた現象っていうのはさ、そっくりそのまま歴史を繰り返してやらなければ
絶対に再現し得ないものなんだよね。
If you don't repeat history perfectly, then the phenomenon known as a miracle becomes impossible to reproduce.
それで避難小屋の歴史を守ろうとしたわけか。
So that's why you tried to make sure history repeated at the shelter cabin,
偶然を再現するために
to reproduce a miracle.
17日に救助隊が到着するよう
In order for the rescue team to arrive on the 17th,
そういうこと。
and that's it.
に。でもその理由は
But why did the shelter cat, the rescue team need to be there in order for the transfer phenomenon to occur?
どうして救助隊が到着するのが17日じゃなければならなかったんだ。
Why did the rescue team's arrival have to be on the 17th?
その日のうちに18便が発見されたという報道がなされなければならなかったからです。
Because it was necessary for the discovery of Flight 18 to be reported on that day.
なぜ？
Why?
教えてほしい。
You want me to tell you?
くどいぞ。
Quit dragging it
分か
out.
った。だけ
Okay,
どその代わり覚悟してよね。
but in exchange you should prepare yourself.
覚悟？
だって
Prepare.
ここから先はサトルに関係があることだから。
Because from now on, it has everything to do with you, Satoru.
俺に？
It's me.
そうだよ。
Yeah, that's right.
17日の報道がなければね、サトルは日本にはいなかったはずなんだ。
The reason it had to be reported on the 17th is that by the 18th you wouldn't have been in Japan anymore, Satoru.
どういうことだ？
What are you talking
多
about?
分覚えてないと思うけど、
Yeah, he went to Australia. You probably don't remember, but
サトルは2011年の1月18日にオーストラリアに出発する予定だったんだ。
you were scheduled to go to Australia on January 18th,
かな
2011.
りの長期間にわたって滞在するつもりだったみたいで、
Apparently you were planning to stay there for a pretty long
チケ
time.
ット部屋で見つけなかった。
Didn't you find the ticket in your room?
見つけ
I did.
た。だけどなんで俺は墜落事故の報道を見てオーストラリア行きを思いとどまったんだ？
But why did I give up on going to Australia after learning about the accident?
そもそもそれとこれとどういう関係がある？
How could they have anything to do with each other?
俺が日本にとどまっていなければ何か不都合が生じたとでも？
Would it have caused some kind of problem if I did stay in Japan?
生じすぎるほど生じただろう
Yeah, too many to even
ね。
name.
まずサトルが2012年のアオサギ島にいなければ歴史が繰り返すことはなかったというのが一つ。
First, there's the fact that history wouldn't have been able to repeat if you weren't on Asogi Island in 2012.
あとは
And as for the rest,
自分で考えてよ。
the rest you should think about on your own. It's very simple. He's the one who he is on the team that invented, that actually performed and set up the machinery to do the space-time transfer.
は？
Huh?
だってこれはサトル自身のことなんだよ。
After all, this is you we're talking about,
僕
Satoru.
がとやかく言うようなことじゃないってば。
I shouldn't have to tell you.
待て。
Wait,
自分で考えても思い出せないからお前に聞いてるんじゃないか。
it's because I can't remember even after thinking about it all this time that I'm asking you.
とにかくこ
Anyway,
れ以上僕の口からは何も言えない。
that's it. My lips are now sealed.
ふざけんなよ。そんな自分勝手なことが許されるとでも思ってんのか？
It's like, you have to just play the bad endings to find this out. Cut the crap. You think I'll let you do whatever the hell you want?
他にも質問したいことは山ほどあるんだぞ。
I have a mountain of questions left.
例えば
Such as?
例えばそうだな。
Such as, let's see.
テラバイトディスクに書かれていた内容とは何だったのか。
What's on that terabyte disk?
ずっと気になってたのに聞きそびれちまってたからな。
It's been bothering me all this time, but I never got the chance to find
知り
out.
たい？
Wanna know?
だからくどいって。
I told you to quit dragging this out.
どうしよっかな。
What should I
教
do?
えてあげてもいいんだけど、
I guess I could tell you, but
だったら早く言えよ。
hurry up and say
サ
it.
トル、あのディスクが今どこにあるのかわかる？
Satoru, do you know where the disk is right now?
今
Right now?
今は
Right now, it's because we know why the alarm clock was set fast, right? It's because Satoru did it himself.
スフィアにはないよ。
It's not in
じ
Sphere.
ゃあどこに？
And where?
1年前の赤倉岳。
On the Mount Agakura of 1 year ago.
多分あっちのユニが持ってるはず
Uni over there probably has
だ。ポ
it.
ケットに入れたままだとしたらの話だけど。
That's if he kept it in his pocket, though.
正解。
Correct.
それじゃあその後テラバイトディスクはどこに行ったと思う？
So where do you think the terabyte disk will go after that?
それから1年の時を経て
Let's see, 1 year will pass after
今
that.
はお前は
So do you have it now?
僕は持ってないよ。
Nope, I don't.
元の場所に戻ったんだ。
It's Back where it came from.
始まりの地点。
Its starting point.
2012年1月11日のスフィアにね。
The Sophia of January 11th, 2012.
あとは言わなくてもわかるでしょ。
It just goes in a circle. Does that work? Yeah, I guess he just sticks it and it's stuck in his pocket. Like, somehow the late uni just kind of slipped into the pocket of the early uni. But then have it and then come around and slip it. They keep doing that, right?
つまりあのディスクは2011年と2012年の間をぐるぐるぐるぐると巡ってるってわけか。
In other words, this goes round and round, which he says goo 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 goo, between the years 2011 and 2012.
歴史は繰り返される。
So history will repeat itself. What about bit rot, though?
いつまでも変わることなく。
Unchanging for all eternity.
今なんと
What did you say just now?
もう一度言おうか。
Should I say it one more
いや
time?
いい
No, it's okay.
歴史は変わらないそう言ったんだよな
History won't change. That's what you said, right?
そうだよね。
And the disc could literally have anything on it. It would still work. Because the contents on it were never burned. Like, literally anything could be on that disc.
お前言ってることが矛盾してないか
It's like a quantum... Well, anyway. Isn't there a contradiction in what you just
さ
said?
っきは歴史を変えないようにするためにあれやこれやとやってきたみたいなことを言ってたじゃないか
You said that you had to do such and such to make sure history doesn't change before, didn't you?
まあ確かにそうだよ。
Well, that's true.
そうではあるけど、
That's true,
で
but
も結果的には歴史は変わらなかったわけで。
but as far as the end result, history didn't change.
は何言ってんだお前
Just what are you trying to say? Saying as long as it's self-consistent, it's fine.
まるっきり変わったじゃないか
Changed completely, didn't it?
まさかあいつらの姿が見えないわけじゃないだろ
Are you saying you can't see them over here, over there?
よもぎさんをはじめとして雪崩に巻き込まれて命を失った者は誰もいない
Starting with Yomogi-san, no one got caught in the avalanche and
過
died.
去が塗り替えられたからだ違うか
The past has been completely painted over, right? This has been my problem from like the very, very beginning of the game. Although it's slightly changed shape a bit over time. Like, I first thought there was like a recreation of the events in the shelter cabin or something, kind of like, you know, like a Ever 17 kind of thing. But my question I always had the question, how did they discover the bodies of these people who get saved in the Golden Ending? How are these people be alive yet for new bodies?
違うとも言えるし、違わないとも言える。
But you could say that's true, but you could also say that it isn't.
例えば、あくまでも例えばの話だよ。
For example, and remember that this is just an
最
example.
初っから雪崩に巻き込まれて死んだ人なんて存在しなかったとしたら、
What if no one got caught in the avalanche and died in the first place?
お前それはそもそも家庭が理不尽ってもんだろ
That's just an irrational assumption, isn't it?
雪崩は確かに起きたし去年の7月にはフラン死体も発見されてる
The avalanche did happen. We even saw it happen. The decomposing bodies were definitely found July last year. We could say one of them may have been Hotori's body. Like the real original Hotori, but we still don't have the man and the other woman. Again, unless they somehow drug out Inamoto's corpse and used it, which we don't have a record of that ever happening. Like, no one actually did drug that corpse out. And that would only account for the man, right?
新聞にもそう書いてあったじゃないか
Said so in the newspaper, right?
だけどその新聞がもしも何者かによる捏造だったとしたら、
And the body of Hotori, again, I don't know why I came back to that. I'm such an idiot. Like, the body of Hotori originally couldn't work because that body was not in the right spot, right? Had to be in the right spot. But what if that newspaper is fabricated by someone? After all, he brought it from the future, but it was fabricated. But he could have fabricated it before bringing it, right?
え
What?
誰かが偽物の新聞を作ったとは考えられない。
But what about the magazine? You don't think it's possible for someone to have made a fake newspaper?
バカな。ありえない。
No way, that's impossible.
だって雑誌にも記事が載ってたんだぞ。
That magazine had the same article. Or they would have just seen the death. Like, Utsumi had reported to her that her husband died.
それまで作り物だと。
And this is maybe just because, it wasn't because they found his body at, huh. She already thought he died before they found the bodies, I guess. Are you saying that it was a fake
可
too?
能性としてはなくはないと思う。
You can't say the possibility doesn't exist. I mean, it does work. It does work if the newspaper was, like, fake. Because... And it was fabricated by Uni. Because they could have identified them as dead, just MIA, because they just never found the bodies. They could have just not found the bodies ever, right? And they would still think they were dead.
じゃあ内海さんのことはどうなる？
What about
彼
Asumi-san?
女は過
Oh,
去のよもぎさんが雪崩に飲まれて死んだことを知っていた。
she already knew how the past Yomogi-san had died in the avalanche. And then it's going to be an exact word situation where she didn't say specifically.
なるほど。確かにそうだね。
I see, that's certainly
だ
true.
ったら歴史は変わるのかもね。
Then I guess history can change after all, huh?
おいおい、あっさり前言を翻すようなこと言うなよ。
Hey, hey, don't just go ahead and say the opposite of what you were saying earlier.
結局どっちなんだ？
In the end, which
お
is
前
it?
は全て経験してきたはずだろ？
You already experienced it all, haven't
お
you?
前の知ってる歴史の中では何が起こったんだ？
What happened in your history that you know?
3人が雪崩に巻き込まれて死んでしまったのか？
Did three of them get dragged into the avalanche and die?
それとも前の歴史の中でも俺は今回と同じように雪崩から彼らを救い、
Like, wrong timeline. Or was it the same as this time, where I ended up saving them from
どっ
it?
ちだ？
Which is it?
どうしようか
What should I do? We thought quietly for a while before I finally said
な。去年
this.
の1月17日、
Last year on January 17th,
僕が赤倉岳で体験した過去。
past I experienced at Mount
そ
Akakura.
れはね、
It's eternal ambiguity to the end of time. I stood by Utsumi's side and gazed down at the two small lives. Those tiny new lives. The two babies were being held against their mother's breast. They looked barely half a year old. Are they they're gonna name them Alpha and Beta? Or are they gonna name them Alpha and Omega? Now and this is gonna be the start of the idea of naming people by Greek letters, is it? Looking at their pure white innocent smiles, innocent you say, I felt the faint sensation of warmth in my chest. The baby's father was there by their side as well. He wore a gentle smile as he stood with his hand on his wife's shoulder. By look of things, he'd already accepted the fact that this was the future. His children had been born and existed right here, so there was no other choice but to leave it. It's like, again, Rip Van Winkle, but only a year's worth as opposed to 20 years worth or 17 years worth. Satoru, yeah, it's the same thing again. Jump forward in time to find you have a son and a daughter, except he already knew that Izumi was pregnant, so it makes it a little bit different. Satoru, who had been talking with Uni until just now, was also here by my side. We gazed at the babies without saying a word. I was only looking at them, but for some reason it made me feel extremely happy. My cheeks lifted in a natural smile. By the way, where were the other three? Looking up, I saw Hotori and Uni a little way off. Uni was crouching down in the snow, working on a snowman. Hotori squatted next to him, staring at it absent-mindedly. She was wearing a strange smile that I'd never seen on her face before. Mayuzumi was standing apart from everyone else. It might have been my imagination, but it felt like she was intentionally avoiding someone. But who was that someone? It's Satoru, but we'll get there. Mayuzumi's eyes focused on Satoru. Furrowing her brow with suspicion, she stared at Satoru in profile. looked up to see the sun, which had already begun to sink in the west. The coast was so warm I could hardly think of it as January weather. We savored the lingering happiness, passing the time as we desired. Evermore, okay. I left Yuni's side and went straight to Utsumi. Utsumi was holding her twin babies against her chest. They were fraternal twins, a boy and a girl. I joined Kokoro and together we gently poked their soft cheeks with our fingertips. That softness suffused me with a sense of warmth that melted all the way to my heart. The two babies kicked their feet energetically. It looked like they were inventing a cute new dance. Most likely they wanted to play. They might have opened their eyes to a dream while floating in They might have opened their eyes to a dream while floating in the amniotic fluid, spent a few moments innocently playing, trying only to amuse themselves. Innocently playing, you say? Innocently? Purely? Artlessly? With brand new pure hearts free of ill will, holding no malice, and totally without conscience. The babies laughed. Seeing that, Kokoro smiled as well. In my heart were recurring feelings of both affection and uncertainty. The instant I touched these new lives, I learned to deny the endless circle of life and death. Okay, more
赤ちゃんっ
remember.
て可愛いよね。
Babies are so cute, don't you think? Satoru and I were walking along the coast, away from Utsumi and the others.
ああ、
Yeah? Another one-word answer. I got a little sulky.
本当にサトルって愛想悪いよね。
Geez, Satoru, you could be so unsociable sometimes.
そうか？
Is that so?
なんでそんなに冷たくするの？
Why are you acting so cold?
別に冷たくしてるわけじゃないさ。
It's not like I'm trying to be cold or anything.
そうかな。そうは見えないんだけどな。
Oh, really? That's not what it looks like to me, but...
ああ、私も赤ちゃん欲しいな。
I want a baby too.
どんなに頑張っても一人じゃできないけどな。
No matter how hard you try, it'll be pretty tough to do with only one person. Well, let's just skip to that. We'll just skip to the baby stage. Just
それもそうね。
you're right.
じゃあサトル、手伝ってくれる？
It's not true. Will you help me?
お前、そんなことを言うためにわざわざ俺をこんなところに連れてきたわけじゃないよな。
Doesn't Lynn exist? You didn't bring me here just to tell me that, right?
違うよ。
Of course not.
じゃあどうして？
Then what is it?
ちょっとね、気になったことがあったから。
Again, no romance in this game. None whatsoever. Ah, well, there's something that's been bothering me.
なんだ？
What is it?
ほとりちゃんのことなんだけど。
It's about Hotori-chan.
ああ、そうか。
It's gonna come up, but they're not gonna answer it just like they didn't answer the whole body paradox.
そういえばまだ心には教えてなかったよな。
Now that you mention it, I haven't told you yet, have I?
お前、避難小屋の近くで雪にうずもれた女の子の死体見たことないか？
Did you see the young woman's corpse buried in the snow near the shelter cabin?
あるけど。
Yeah, I did.
実はな、それが本物のほとりの姿だったんだよ。
You see, she's the real
ど
Hotori.
ういうこと？
What do you mean? He began to explain. While poring over the vast archive of video records, Satoru had realized that the Hotori he interacted with was completely different from the one I knew. He said that the consciousnesses residing in her were clearly different. The most striking disparity could be seen during Inamoto's murder. Hotori had asked Satoru to stab or to be stabbed. Which one do you prefer? And the Hotori who was terrified at the sight of her own blood-stained body. Satoru had no doubt it was the result of two different personalities being in control of the same body. And there was one more. The Hotori rammed into Inamoto and was innocently playing in the pool of blood. That seemed to be a different personality from the others, according to Satoru. And finally Satoru said,
おそらくほとりもまた俺や心や第三の人格と同じように転移現象に巻き込まれ続けていたのだと思う。
I think Hotori was dragged into the transference phenomenon the same way it happened to you, me, and the third personality.
最終的には犬伏恵子の体に落ち着くことになったわけだが、
In the end, she sailed into the body of Inabushi Keiko.
じゃあ犬伏本人の意識は
But then, what about the consciousness of Inabushi herself?
1年前の赤倉岳にある
She's at the Mount Akakura of 1 year ago,
雪にうずもれた死体の中に。
inside that corpse buried in the snow.
なるほどね。
I see. But even though I said that, the explanation didn't satisfy me. Doesn't satisfy me either. Something's off. It's strange. Why is the one at Mount Akakura Inabushi and the one at Asogi Island Totori? Each consciousness was always tied to a specific area. If that's the case, then the one at Sphia should remain at Sphia, right? If that's the case, the Hotori I know is currently Inabushi Keiko. Before I could think, I was up and running.
心どこ行くんだよ。
Hey Kokoro, where are you going? I heard his voice from behind me, but I didn't have time to answer. I had to find her. Had to hear it from her herself. She's Keiko, isn't she? I rushed over to Yomogi and Utsumi. Utsumi was only holding one of the babies. Where's the other one? That bothered me, but I believed that my first priority was to find Otori. Oh, the baby's gonna run into the sea almost drowned, and then the other baby's gonna come and save him. We know what's gonna happen. We don't have to read that.
ほとりちゃんはどこ？
Where's Hotori-chan? I asked.
彼女ならほらあそこに。
If you're looking for her, she's right over there, see? She pointed at me. She pointed behind me. I turned around.
Kagome, kagome. カゴの中の鳥はいついつ出やる夜明けの晩に
At least I predicted this at the beginning of this recording.
鶴と亀が滑った後ろの正面誰
Roll credits. Oh. After being left behind by Kokoro again, so this is called Where is Self? I reluctantly trudged back up the path I'd come. After a few steps, I saw the back of someone I'd been missing for the longest time. Well, even though I say I'd miss her for the longest time, I guess I'd see her several times over the last week. She stood there all alone on the beach. Mayuzumi Lin, the woman I was once together with. I've yet to talk to her since I returned to my own body. It's been a long time since we've held a conversation where I was in my own body. My heart beat faster and faster as I walked over to her. She began to turn around. I looked into her eyes as if trying to sense how she felt. What should I say? I couldn't find the words to address her with. The words that finally slipped out of my mouth
久しぶ
were,
りだな、リー。
Long time no see, Lin. From my point of view, I know I've already seen her many times from inside that borrowed body. But according about putting even more pressure on her psyche, I decided that long time no see was the most appropriate phrase to use. She didn't respond. With her eyes narrowed, she stares at me, though trying to read my thoughts.
どうしたんだよ。
What's wrong?
なんでそんな目で見るんだ。
Why are you looking at me like that? A stare of open disdain. Her expression was so cold, I could feel it freezing me all the way to my heart. A feeling that something bad was about to happen overwhelmed me. My heart frantically pounded in my chest. Time stood still. I couldn't even hear the sound of the waves anymore. Within that tense silence, she opened her mouth ever so slightly. And then when she spoke, she said,
あなた誰？
That's like imagine that she got swapped somehow. Who are you? These words completely stunned me, almost as if I'd been handed a death sentence.
あなたは
You are
サトルじゃない。
not Satoru.
私の知っている有機道サトルじゃないわ。
You're not the Yukido Satoru I knew. Which is true. He wasn't. The Yukido Satoru she knew was the I that was saying stuff like, I will smite David. he was kind of a harsh, he was a kind of a mean guy, you would say. He's a bad guy. In an instant, the color drained out of my world. Promotional posters, magazine front covers. Okay. Yes, save the system data. Oh! Okay, well, let's look at the stuff, though. Okay. This is a thing. It just ends there. Okay, all the musics, but 10 out of 33 endings, 144 out of the 154 scenes, 74 out of the 110 tips, 100. Wow, that's still a lot of tips to go. 109 out of 116 CGs, 80% of the text, 45% of the choices. Kokoro chapter good end. Satoru murdered in the bathroom. Oh wait. Incidents via end. Annihilation in Mizumi 3. Die without returning end. Location X avalanche end. Satoru chapter good end. Satoru chapter epilogue. Utsumi on a rampage. Satoru stabbed end. Yukito's plans failure. Failure end. Okay. Okay, I skipped a Kokoro scene. Skipped more Kokoro scenes in here. Skipped more scenes by Kokoro that I didn't get. Another skipped scene. These are all Satoru scenes. Got all of them continuously until I got to here. This one skipped. Pure Eternus. Okay, ambivalence, there's two skipped here, then identification, okay. Where is self is the end one? Okay, I'm gonna have to redo a restart and make another save because because I'm afraid if I don't save a game, it's not gonna actually remember the system data. It's weird like that. So I'm gonna do a new game. I'm gonna do it as Kokoro. And then I'm gonna do some stuff and then save it.
Yeah, Chaika.
Still don't know what this is all, what the seagull stuff is all about.
私はか
Skip. Okay, let's do this. Save. Okay. Pull the hands away. Let's try that. I quickly pulled the hands away from my eyes and turned around. Okay, heaven is here.
つまんないの。
You're no fun.
ノリが悪いな、お姉ちゃん。
You're in a bad mood, huh, Uni-chan? Pime is a boy who I'd never seen before. He peeked over at the back of my seat with an innocent smile on his face.
君は誰？
Who are you?
だから、それを当てるゲームをやってたんじゃないか。
Gee, that's why I wanted to play the guessing game with
ゲ
you.
ーム？
A game?
知らないの？カゴメカゴメ。
You don't know it? Kagome Kagome?
それは知ってるけど。
I know the game,
ね
but
ここ空いてる？
hey, is this seat empty? He thumped the headrest of the window seat next to mine with the palm of his
っ
hand.
ていうか空いてるよね。
It's empty,
途
right?
中で乗ってくる人も
And it doesn't look
いな
like
さそうだし。
anyone else will be coming on board anytime soon. He said as he peered out the window.
到着までまだだいぶかかると思うよ。
I think it'll be a while until we get there.
何しろ日本列島のてっぺんまで行くんだからね。
We are flying to the far edge of the Japanese islands, you know.
でも、
But
旅は道連れ世は情け。
in traveling companionship, in life, compassion.
袖すり合うも和尚の礼って言うじゃん。
Every new meeting happens because of the spirits of priests. That's what they say, right?
和尚の霊？
The spirits of priests. The boy quickly slipped into the window seat beside me.
はじめまして。
Nice to meet you.
僕楠田由に。
My name is Kasuda Uni.
生年月日は1999年10月19日、11歳天秤座。
I'm 11 years old. My birthday is October 19th, 1999, and my sign is Libra.
血液型は AB 型。
My blood type is AB.
だからかどうかはわからないけど、よく人に変わってるねって言われます。
I don't know if that's the reason or not, but a lot of people tell me I'm
好
weird.
きな食べ物はエスカルゴとキノコのバターソテーで、嫌いな食べ物は茶碗蒸しの中に入ってる銀なんです。
My favorite food is escargot sauteed in butter with mushrooms, and my least favorite food is ginknut custard.
で、お姉ちゃんは？
What about you, Oni-chan?
私は、
Defeated by his overwhelming figure, I was unable to say anything. Then the boy, without fear of reservation, came up close to me. Oh, brother. I'm not really good at dealing with stuff like this.
どうしたの？
What's wrong? The boy tilted his head. I averted my gaze, looking over his shoulder instead. As I looked past the sea of clouds, the world seemed to go on forever, boundless and free.
ココロンは20歳でしょ。
Kokoro is 20, isn't she? Yuni suddenly said. As he was asking so persistently, I ended up telling him my name, Fuyukawa Kokoro. However, I hadn't said anything, not so much as a single clue that would have allowed him to guess my age.
どうしてわかったの？
How do you know?
ふふん、すごい？
Impressive. Yuni threw his head back onto the seat and made a sound with his nose.
超能力かもね。
Maybe I'm psychic. Now it's letting me skip. My, so was this grabbing onto my sleeve a result of karma from a previous life? Just what exactly had happened in my past life, I
で
wonder.
正解は？
So what's the answer?
年齢が分かった理由、教えてくれるんでしょ？
It's called the Alpha and the Omega. Then the plane crash happens, right? Save. Not. Right. I'm just gonna load. Sorry for being subjected to an unskippable opening sequence. So you do it back to here. Yes. I. Say who, I wonder.
誰かな
Who could it
誰
be?
でしょ
Who could it be?
誰だろう
I wonder who it
う
is.
誰だと思う
Who do you think it is? No one's traveling with me on this flight. I boarded this plane by myself. I don't have the slightest idea. Just with a voice which is still undergoing the changes of puberty, it could only be the boy sitting in the seat behind me. The palms that covered my eyes were pretty
ダ
small.
メだ降参降参
It's useless. I give up. I raised both my arms and spun around my wrist
本当に
playfully.
降参
Are you sure you give up?
し
Yep.
ょうがないじゃあ教えてあげよう
Well then, I guess I'll just have to tell
正
you.
解は
Correct answer it was. Okay.
楠田ユニくんでした
Kusuda Unikun. Turning around, I found, as I had expected, a boy who looked to be about elementary school age. Whose leaning over the headrest was an innocent smile. Kusuda Unikun. Is that what he said? I didn't remember hearing that name anywhere, nor having ever seen his face.
そっかユニくんって言うんだ
I see, Unikun, is
か
it?
わいい名前だね
That's a cute
あ
name.
りがとう
Thanks.
友達にはユニシロとかユニットバスとかって言われてよくからかわれるけどね
My friends often tease me by calling me Unishiro or Unit Bath, though. His shyly smiling face was friendly and
ねえお
charming.
姉ちゃん隣行ってもいい
Hey, Oni-chan, can I sit
空い
next
て
to
る
you?
んでしょ
The seat here is free, right? I take a glance at my wristwatch. There was still a lot of time before we could reach our
Oide.
destination. Come on over. I patted the seat by the window. The boy, who had introduced himself as Uni, pounced into the seat beside me as suddenly as in a game of musical chairs when the music had stopped.
ねえ一つ気になったことがあるんだけど聞いてもいいかな
Hey, there was something I was curious about. Do you mind if I ask?
何
What is it?
ユニくんさっきかごめ歌の中で夜明けの晩にって歌ってたでしょ
When you were singing the Kagome song earlier, you sang Yoke no Ban. Evening lit by the dawn, right? To mean night in general, ordinarily it was used to discover the period of time between twilight and sunset. In other words, the time when night begins. Okay.
私の記憶が正しければ確かあそこの歌詞は月夜の晩にだったと思うんだけど
If I remember correctly, I think that part should be Tsukiyo no Ban, everything lit by the moonlight.
月夜の晩
Everything lit by the moonlight.
そうだって夜明けの晩じゃ意味が通らないじゃない
Right, because evening lit by the dawn doesn't really make much sense, does it?
明け方なのか夕方なのか太陽は東にあるのか西にあるのか
When it's dawn, the sun rises in the east, and at night the sun sets in the west, right?
お姉ちゃんが子供の頃はそうやって歌ってたの
So is that the way you sang it when you were a kid, Oni-chan? Let's try, I say, evening lit by the dawn.
うん夜明けの晩にって歌ってた
No, come to think of it, I did sing it, evening lit by the
じゃあ
dawn.
どうして月夜の晩だと思ったの
Then why do you think it went evening lit by the moonlight?
うんちょっとね前に読んだ物語の中にそう書いてあったから
Well, it was written that way in this story I read a while ago.
でもあそこのところは夜明けの晩で合ってると思うよ
But I think evening lit by the dawn is how it should be. Uni said so while picking at the chipped nails on one of his
だ
fingers.
ってすぐ後の歌詞には鶴と亀後ろの正面っていうのがあるじゃん
Because after that, the next lines go, crane and turtle, right behind you, in front of your back, right?
夜明けと晩
Dawn and
鶴
evening,
と亀
crane and
後ろ
turtle,
と正面
the back, the
どれ
front.
も2つで一対になるものを表している
They're all two things that make up a pair but being the opposites of one another.
光と影陰と陽オスとメス虚数と実数
Light and shadow, yin and yang, male and female, imaginary numbers and real
こ
numbers.
の世界は二律背反する2つの要素がうまく重なり合って共存してるんだ。
This whole world is made up of elements that contradict each other, but at the same time need to coexist with one another.
カゴメ歌の主題はまさにこれ。
I think that is what the Kagome song is tries to
だから
say.
月夜の晩よりも夜明けの晩の方がふさわしいんだよ。
That's why evening lit by the dawn would be much more fitting than evening lit by the moonlight.
なるほどね。
I see. I groaned without noticing.
とはいえ、今僕の言った解釈が必ずしも正解とは言えない。
All that being said, my interpretation may not be completely
あ
correct.
の歌にはまだまだいっぱい謎が残されてるからね。
That song still has many mysteries to it.
謎って？
Mysteries? What kind of mysteries?
そうだな。
Well, let's see.
例えば、そもそもカゴメとは何を意味しているのか。
For example, what does Kagome mean? Inabushi Kaiko
カ
knows.
ゴの中の鳥が象徴するものとは一体何なのか。
What's the symbolism behind the bird within the cage? Means pregnancy,
どうし
right?
て鶴と亀は滑ってしまったのか。滑らなければならなかったのか。
Why did the crane and the turtle slip? Did they have to slip?
それから、
And then there's
後
the...
ろの正面だれ。
Who's that behind you? Which... something to do with Inabushi Kaiko. As he hummed that phrase, Yuni took off his glasses. He covered his eyes with his own hands and turned around.
僕は今、何も見えない。
Right now I can't see anything at all.
人間が五感によって外部から入手できる情報のうち、およそ8割は視覚に依存していると言われているよね。
They say that out of all our senses, sight is responsible for 8/10 of all the information that we humans gather, you
つま
know.
り今の僕は、身の回りで起きている様々な現象のうちの2割しか認識できないってこと。
That means right now I'm only able to feel a mere 2/10 of everything that's occurring around me with my other senses.
残りの8割は曖昧で判然としなくて、
The remaining 80% is left vague and
お
unclear.
姉ちゃんが僕の後ろで何をしてるのか、どんな表情をしてるのかもわからない。
I have no idea, no way of knowing what Oni-chan's doing behind me right now. So what kind of expression, what kind of expression she has on her
お姉
face?
ちゃんの存在は今、僕にとっては不確定要素のうちの一つなんだ。
Right now, Oni-chan's existence is one of many unknowns to me.
後ろの正面は、振り返って目を開くまで決まらない。
To make it shorter, Drew's cat. Until I open my eyes and turn around, what's behind me is still undecided. Just as Yuni was unable to see my face, I was unable to see what kind of expression he had on his. I was only able to see his back. A small back.
君、いくつなの？
How old are you, anyway? After a slight pause, I asked him that.
11。
11. Yuni turned around with his eyes still covered. Then he peered at me through his
よかっ
fingers.
た。
Thank goodness
そこにいてくれて。
that you're here. His cheeks lift into a broad smile as he laughs. His smile was certainly that of an 11-year-old boy. Okay.
ココロンは20歳でしょ。
Kokoro is 20, isn't she? That's what he said right after I had introduced myself. I had told him my name, Fuyukawa Kokoro, and then had a little chat with him about the place of our destination. However, I had given him any hints or clues that would help him guess my age like that.
どうしてわかったの？
How'd you know?
ふふん、すごい？
Fufu impressed? Yuni threw his head back onto the seat and made a sound with his nose.
超能力かもね。
Okay. Now it goes.
犬伏恵子。
ただーん、バッ。
Okay. I'm gonna save this. We're gonna skip a slot and save here. Okay. load. Oh, the second heaven is here. Yes.
お姉ちゃんが子供の頃はそうやって歌ってたの？
Say evening lit by the moonlight. Yep. I gave a confident nod. Hmm.
でもあそこのところは夜明けの晩で合ってると思うよ。
I think evening lit by the dawn is how it should be. Uni said so while picking at the chip. Okay, does it? Yeah, okay.
Hane?
Okay, so then I'm gonna save this one as well, just to make sure that like it gets. I don't care about the actual contents. No, I don't want to. I want to do a load. I've done it so often, where I save when I'm supposed to do a load and overwrite a file I don't want to overwrite. Okay. Yes.
お姉ちゃんが子供の頃
Try. I didn't sing it as a
私
child.
実はカゴメカゴメってやったことないんだ。
Actually, I've never played Kagome Kagome before.
もしかしたら記憶にないだけかもしれないけどね。
Or it might be that I just don't remember doing it.
ちっちゃい頃のことなんてよく覚えてないし。
I don't really remember a lot of stuff I used to do when I was little.
じゃあどうして月夜の晩だと思ったの？
Why do you think it went evening lit by the moonlight?
ちょっとね。前に読んだ物語の中にそう書いてあったから。
Well, it was written that way in the story I read a while ago.
でもあそこのところは
Okay.
夜明けの晩で合ってると思うよ。
I'll just go off of this one because that's the choice that gives you another choice is likely like the more content like giving choice. I don't think though the choices you make in this intro really matter. I don't think the choices matter until you get through the intro cutscene, which you're gonna have to get subjected to again in a minute here because I don't know how to skip it. So in order to lock that choice in, and then I'll put my save. I'll pick up from there on with after the intro. And I'm gonna go into the clear list and see if I manage to get all of the 100% the scene.
私の名前は冬川心。
Oops, I muted myself I muted my voice volume during the cutscene thing, and then I didn't turn it back on, so it said I was doing. So I dropped a save, and then I'm just gonna not mess with this. I'm just gonna mess with this. I'm gonna stop here and mess with this next recording. Next thing is I have to do. I'm gonna title. Yes. I have to do is really boring, right? I have to go through and do all the bad endings and all the alternate choices. And that's going to be no like if this Let's Play has viewership, right? The amount of views is suddenly going to drop off on this one. It's going to be like lots of views, drop on the next one because I have to. No one wants to watch me do this, but I have to go in. I have to go in there and I have to get all this stuff that I missed to finish it all off. But I managed to get 100% of Heaven is Here. So 100% on Alpha and Omega, 100% on Fall Down, 100% of Bosom of Motherhood. The closed off structure, I'm at 58%. So I have to try other options to get that and keep going. So at least we got these. These are 100%. I think Heaven is Here and the Alpha and the Omega are the first two on Satoru as well. I don't think they actually change. Okay, well, that's it for that. I guess I should comment on that ending. That ending, it seemed like a fake out golden ending to me because there's a precedent. Like at the end, it said like the story is not over because you are still in the infinite loop. Right at the end, in all of the other Infinity games I know of, it only gives me that ending if you've not gotten to the golden ending. I haven't seen that happen on the golden ending. But it kind of rolled the credits and had the in-credit song, like it had an after-credit scene like the golden ending would have. But then just give me that message at the end. Making it so that like you think you've reached the golden ending, but then it's like, but no! The problem is that it's like, it'd have to be like this album can't be trusted because according to the album, that's the last CG. So the ending past that would, if there's more past that that's hidden, it would have to be like the album lies in its options, which is possible. Could be really tricky like that. That would be really cool if they did do that. Or that literally is just the ending. It just ends that way. Also on the scenes list, that's the last scene listed, right? Yeah, if I go to the bottom, I got to the bottom of the scenes list. So unless the scenes list intentionally lies, that's the end. So yeah. That's literally the ending, and the ending just kind of leaves it open. Like it reveals to you, it doesn't resolve the paradox of the bodies. It just leaves that hanging. And I don't think there actually is a solution you're supposed to find by studying it harder. It's just the author being like, I'm not going to resolve this. I know of another game that's like that too. It's just like, I also know a game that kind of acts like that, but you can go in and study it. You can find out the right answer. It doesn't resolve that. But it does resolve a couple. It does tell me a couple, but then it sort of tells you some things and kind of leaves them open. Like, for example, Leon accuses Satoru of not being the Satoru she knew. So you have to think about, okay, did at some point Inamoto and Satoru switch? Like we saw in that bad ending. And what the Satoru we see is actually not the Satoru that dated Lin. It's Inamoto in Satoru's body, we're playing the entire game as Inamoto in Satoru's body. That's possible, right? That's what that could mean in the end. It could also just simply mean because he lost his memories, he lost his personality, and he behaves a lot differently than he used to. He does have this weird memory, though, where he has just the memories of dating Lynn and nothing else. Which is kind of an interesting, like, it was like that was just, those specific memories were just inserted. Just those specific ones. Another interpretation, but he lost the rest of them and he's actually Inamoto. Or another interpretation, that he's that guy, right? That he's like Blink Winkle. But he's not Satoru because he's Blink Winkle, and that's why he lost his memories because he's Blink Winkle. So there's a lot there that you could, it means something, but it doesn't quite clear up what exactly it means. The one that you can take most hints from the game for is that he is Inamoto in Satoru's body and not actually Satoru. And so his personality is actually slightly different than that of Satoru. And somehow Lin was able to figure that out. Maybe because his personality wasn't quite right. So that's kind of open. And then it actually like nailed down and made certain. And then there's something there's one thing that it kind of left ambiguous, but then it seemed to nail down and make certain. And that is that Hotori, the mute Hotori is the real Hotori. The Hotori that can talk, who introduced herself and said, "I am Hotori," somehow knew that Hotori had swapped into her body and was trying to frame up a narrative. Somehow knew that she could do this. Somehow was smart enough to figure this out. To frame up a narrative that she died at Mount Akakura and that Hotori had taken over her body from there on out. But she didn't know that Hotori was mute. Or she didn't bother to pretend. And so she just thought that if she said she was Hotori, people would believe that's who she was. And Inabushi Keiko fooled Satoru into thinking that Inabushi Keiko was dead. And the body of Inabushi Keiko was occupied by Hotori from here on out. But it was really Inabushi Keiko the entire time. It was the murderous monster. And at the end, just after the end, right after the game ends, she murders one of the babies. That's just what's gonna happen. It's pretty much nailed down. She's the murderer, right? Well, not bad. I'm kind of still hoping a little bit that that's not the ending, but the clear like stuff would have to lie. Like it's very unlikely that's not the ending. It did give a little tease though. Yeah, that's called Satoru Good End, right? Satoru Good End and Satoru Epilogue. Okay, well, that's my impressions, my immediate impressions. I'm gonna stop recording now.